Summer is almost upon us, and of course, in addition to the unbearable heat, we have a lot of new anime to discuss for the upcoming season. Sequels, new shows, originals, let's discuss it all right here, right now. Jujutsu Kaisen is getting its second season after quite a while, actually. It has been over 2 years since it ended. Obviously, it's Jujutsu Kaisen, it's MAPPA, it's gonna look good, it's gonna be big, maybe the biggest thing of the season, and I'm hoping it will give me a lot of what I liked about both the movie and the last few episodes, that last arc of the first season. Not that I didn't like what came before, but I really felt like the show was coming into its own and becoming more than just a, good-looking battle shonen during that last arc and in the movie. So I hope we'll get more of that. And of course, the good animation will not be unwanted either. The Devil is a Part-Timer is coming back for its third season, but it's being called second season because it's the second season of the double exclamation point season, which was season 2, which came out last year. So this is season 2 of season 2. It's very stupid. Probably should have just added a third exclamation point, right? Either way, I am looking forward to this because I liked The Devil is a Part-Timer Season 2. Yes, the animation quality could and should have been better. It isn't good when a show doesn't look as good as its season that came out 9 years prior. That being said, I didn't think it looked terrible. I thought it looked fine. And I liked the story. I liked seeing these characters again. It felt like more of what I had enjoyed from season 1. So I am hopeful that this season, which I'm just going to call season 3, will continue to offer that. I imagine people are not going to be as excited for this as they were for season 2 because they have a negative perception of season 2, so this will probably not change things unless the animation quality improves, which I hope it does, don't get me wrong. But even if it's mostly the same as it was last season, I'll be fine with it. I'm just happy to see more Devil's a Part-Timer, and I hope we'll continue to see more Devil's a Part-Timer going forward. Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation is getting its second season because what we had before was season 1 part 1 and season 1 part 2. So this is the actual second season we're getting now. This is a show that, despite how big it was, despite how popular it was, despite how controversial it was, I never really felt that strongly towards. It's okay. I'm not that big on the characters, but I don't despise Rudius like I know a lot of people do. He's just kind of whatever. I know there is going to be a time skip for this season, so maybe that will improve his character in the eyes of a lot of people. We'll see. My main issue with the show was mainly that I just didn't really care that much about the world or the setting. It wasn't that appealing to me. And part of that is just a general lack of interest in fantasy worlds. Like usually if a show is going to be fantasy based, whether it's actual fantasy or isekai or whatever, it has to do more than just be a fantasy world to appeal to me. And obviously this is not a show that's as generic as people think of with like all the isekai that take place in the same walled city and everything. Like it's not to that extent. But as someone who isn't that inherently intrigued by a fantasy setting with magic and different species and all of that, this didn't really do anything for me. This didn't grab me. This didn't make me think, oh wow, this is an interesting world. I just didn't really care. I hope that will change, but ultimately that's the main thing that's going to make me just kind of be whatever on this. I'll check it out. We'll see what happens, but I can't say I'm looking forward to it that much. That being said, if you are, that's great. No problem with that. Like what you like, enjoy it. I hope I'll be able to enjoy it more myself. Tonikawa, Over the Moon for You, despite its second season still airing at time of recording, is getting basically 4 OVAs that are going to be released every 2 weeks starting in July. So 2 in July, 2 in August, which is just going to adapt the next arc in the source material before eventually I assume we'll get a season 3, though who knows if and when that will be announced. But this is basically just the next arc that is relatively short, and then the arc afterwards is a longer arc, a more important arc, a bigger arc. So I guess they just want to get this out of the way before they move on to that, which makes sense. So if you're enjoying Tonikawa right now, you're going to get more of it almost immediately. Bungo Stray Dogs is getting its 5th season after a single season break from its 4th season in winter. And I don't know, man, like, if you've heard me talk about this show before, you know how I feel. It's Bungo Stray Dogs. It's whatever. It's fine. It's not a show I'm that invested in. It's just kind of something that exists. And unfortunately, I feel locked into watching it because I've seen the other seasons, because I watched season 1 and 2 after they were done at the end of 2016, and I felt the need to keep watching more to keep my opinion up to date on it. That's not something everybody has to do. It's something I make myself do, for better or for worse. So here we are. Even though I don't hate this show, it's never been a show I've been that enamored with, and I don't really expect season 5 to change things, just like I didn't expect season 4 to change things, and it didn't. I guess the interesting thing here is that season 5 will just pick up directly from season 4 instead of sort of kind of doing its own thing, if that makes sense. Like, the main plot of season 4 has not been resolved, so season 5 will continue directly from it, which, yeah, technically season 4 still had to pick up from the plot that wasn't fully resolved from season 3, but season 3 had more of like a, okay, we've resolved a lot of stuff, if not everything, whereas that's not the case with 4 and 5, if that makes sense. Whatever, it's Bungo, it's there, whatever. I don't really have anything else to say about the show. A new season of Horimiya is coming. Horimiya, The Missing Pieces, which is, as I discussed in a news video a couple months ago, is basically just a season that's going to fill in the gap, the content that was skipped over in season 1, which was the main problem people had with season 1 of Horimiya, that it adapted the end of the manga and skipped over a lot of stuff and gave us basically like a slideshow, a PowerPoint presentation of stuff that was skipped over at the end, which they did with another show that Cloverworks animated that season. Anyway, I think this is good. I hope that this does start a trend that more shows that didn't adapt everything decide to go back and do seasons that fill in those gaps. There are a lot of shows that I think would benefit from that. Similarly to this, we are getting that quintessential quintuplets thing that is basically exactly this, filling in the gaps, though in that case apparently it's going to be a like hour-long special coming out this season rather than a full TV season. But regardless, I think it's good that stuff like this is happening, and I hope that this does well and encourages other studios to do more of this. And now we have something that's not really a sequel, but a full-on reboot in the new adaptation of Rurouni Kenshin. Now, this is a difficult one to talk about, partly because of the issues surrounding the original source materials creator and the stuff he basically got away with. And I know for a lot of people that taints this, and I don't blame anyone for feeling that way. I don't have the strongest attachment to Rurouni Kenshin. I watched it when the pandemic first started and didn't really care that much for it outside of Trust and Betrayal. I think the show, the old one, suffers a lot from its filler, from dragging things out unnecessarily, and even the stuff that isn't filler, I wasn't that enamored with. I really do think that like Trust and Betrayal is the main thing that is worth exploring and watching. But it is a story that definitely will benefit from getting readapted. Not just because, oh, new animation. If that was the only reason, I'd say don't even bother. To cut out all the filler, because there was a lot of filler in Rurouni Kenshin. Like a third of the show, if not more than that, is filler. The entire last chunk of the show is filler, and there's a number of filler episodes in the first chunk of the show. It is something that really could stand to be slimmed down. And a lot of people intentionally stop watching the show after, I believe it's episode 62, because they see no reason to watch all the filler that comes afterwards up through episode 95. But there's still filler in those 62 episodes, unfortunately. It's something that will definitely benefit from getting slimmed down. Also, the entire last arc of the manga did not get a proper adaptation, so there's that as well. Now, we don't know how long this adaptation will go for. We don't know exactly what it is and isn't adapting, because the main trailer we have almost kind of suggests it might do some stuff from Trust and Betrayal, which would be interesting if they try to readapt that, because I don't know if they'd be able to do it as well as the original adaptation, which is so beloved even now. But it could also just be throwing stuff like that in to be like flashbacks that it'll focus on later. Who knows? But it's there, and I guess at the very least it'll be interesting to see how this reboot is handled. Now, let's talk about the new shows from this season, starting off with The Girl I Like Forgot Her Glasses, which already kinda tells you what the show is going to be about just from the title, but let's go through it. A girl who wears glasses, forgets them one day, and her classmate, who already really likes her, ends up having to help her through not being able to see very well without her glasses. And then it becomes a recurrence. She forgets them, he helps her, they grow closer. There you go. A nice cute slice of life. Something that we've gotten actually a lot of this year already, especially in this current season, and nothing wrong with having one more sweet little show that has some romance, some slice of life, some good looking animation. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be cute. I think it'll be nice to watch. Nothing too deep, but a nice thing to throw on. Continuing with the romance angle, we have My Happy Marriage, which is going to be streaming on Netflix weekly, as I understand it. I don't know what they're doing about a dub or anything, but should be relatively accessible, sort of. At least it's not being held in Netflix jail. Now, this is a show that I'm mainly putting on here because of what I've heard about the source material, that it is genuinely really sweet and enjoyable, because just reading from the premise, I don't know if I would have put it on. I might have, but this is basically a show where a girl who didn't have the greatest upbringing, wasn't treated very well by her family, is married off to a guy in the military. And she is not expecting to have a happy marriage. She is expecting to just basically have to fulfill the role that is expected of her as the wife to somebody she barely knows. But apparently, no, it is, and you could probably expect this, a marriage that ends up being enjoyable, where the two get along well. The husband is not what she expected him to be, and apparently it's really sweet. So for that reason, I'm throwing it on here. Next up, we have Saint Cecilia and Pastor Lawrence. Now, this show is interesting to me for one reason, which I'll get to. Basically, in this world, you have this town. Pastor Lawrence is, of course, their pastor. And what's different is that seemingly each church has what they would call a saint. Now, this isn't a saint in how we would necessarily think of it. This is basically just describing somebody who works at the church as a saintly person because of how they are supposed to act and who they are supposed to be. Someone who is kind, can give meaningful advice, and is basically supposed to be this image that people look up to and want to emulate in some way. The ideal of how a saintly person should be. And Lawrence's job is basically to help bring people to the saint, Saint Cecilia in this case, to deal with whatever their concerns are. The problem is Saint Cecilia really wants nothing to do with this and is much more interested in just chilling out and relaxing and sleeping. And that's basically the whole joke, that she is someone who is supposed to be this ideal saintly person, and she is anything but. Over time, despite their disagreements and arguments at first, Lawrence and Cecilia grow closer and eventually, presumably, develop a romance. Now, the reason this is here, beyond just sounding like a pretty cute show, is because the source material for this is listed on my anime list as being an Iyashikei. Now, notably, the show is not. Why that is, I don't know, beyond just Mal being very strange with what they consider Iyashikei. It's a relatively new tag that they've added ever since they overhauled their themes and their genres and stuff like that. So there are a lot of shows that Mal lists as Iyashikei that I vehemently disagree with being called Iyashikei, some of which are just very bizarre in terms of what shows are included. And they have changed what shows are included and what aren't over time. Some shows used to be considered Iyashikei and then they took it away. So this is one where they're listing the source material but not the show, and like maybe it could be, especially if they really do try to lean into this idea of relaxing and having naps and just trying to be chilled out because of who Cecilia is. I could see this being an Iyashikei, but a lot of this depends on how it's presented, how it's directed. And I'm not sure if this is actually going to be that or not. It might, and I'm not saying it needs to be an Iyashikei to be good, but obviously I would presumably enjoy it a lot more if it was an Iyashikei. So I'm curious to see if this ends up being that or not. It is being done by Doga Kobo, who is well known for their slice of life, but a number of shows that they've done that some people would consider Iyashikei, I would not. So that also makes me concerned that this won't actually be that. I don't know. We'll find out. Either way, it's something I'm going to keep my eye on. And lastly, probably, I would say the new show that has the most hype going into it is Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead. Now, this is interesting for a number of reasons. It's interesting, one, because we very rarely get zombie shows in anime. It's just not really a thing. Like, I can only think of 2 zombie anime off the top of my head. One of them is Zombieland Saga, which really has nothing to do with the traditional zombie genre. It's just the characters happen to be zombies, but it's an idol show, so it's really not a zombie show in the way we think of it. And then you have High School of the Dead, which A, is 13 years old, and B, is more well known for its fan service and its just general absurdity than for being like a serious zombie horror survival story. Now, Zom 100 is clearly going to put a spin on things as well, but regardless, this seems to be the closest to a typical zombie apocalypse show that anime has really ever done. And even if you want to count High School of the Dead, it's still been 13 years since we've got something like that. So this is the type of show that has just been done to death, no pun intended, in the West and has barely been touched on in Japan. So it's interesting to see an anime try and delve into this. The second thing that's interesting is that this is going to be very readily available because this is streaming weekly, not only on Netflix, but also on Hulu. Very rare to see that. Usually it's one or the other. Now, what adds even more to this is that this is a Viz Media show. This isn't a Netflix show, this isn't a Hulu show, it's a Viz show that they are giving streaming rights to both Netflix and Hulu to stream it weekly. And they've already announced a dub that's going to start, roughly a month after the show starts airing subbed. That will also stream weekly on Netflix and Hulu. So no matter how you want to watch it, no matter where you want to watch it, this should be very easy to view, which should presumably only help it being more popular. Now, the twist on the genre that this show has, if you've read the description, is that the main character is actually happy that the zombie apocalypse has happened. And the reason why is because his life basically sucked. He hated his life, he hated what he was doing, he was miserable. But then the apocalypse happened and everything he had to worry about, all his stresses and concerns were gone. Now, of course, he has to worry about getting bitten by a zombie, but he is just so thrilled that everything that was weighing him down and making him miserable is gone that he feels exhilarated. And he decides he's going to make a bucket list of all the things he wants to do in life now that he has the time and the ability before he eventually becomes a zombie. That's really cool. That's a different take on this type of genre. It's not going to necessarily be this gritty, we got to survive and rebuild civilization and deal with all the zombies. This is going to be something a little bit more, I guess, energetic and fun. And I am looking forward to it because of that. I think this will seemingly be the show that people are going to be looking out for the most among the non-sequels. But of course, there's probably going to be a lot of shows that are under the radar that end up being really good. These were the 4 new ones that stood out to me the most. There are a couple other shows that I could maybe see being worthwhile, but they didn't stand out enough based on their descriptions for me to want to talk about them. But as always, I expect a number of shows to end up being worth watching that I did not talk about here, simply because it's going to take actually watching them and seeing reception for it to determine if they are worth looking into. But these are the 4 that I want to keep my eye on, and the 4 that are the most interesting to me based on the new shows. So that does it for our seasonal discussion for summer 2023. Let me know down in the comments what shows you're looking forward to, which shows I did not talk about, and of course your thoughts on the shows that we did talk about. Thank you so much for watching. Look forward to the next video. Take care, and I'll see you next time.